Welcome to State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato, coming to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio here in Newark, New Jersey. We're pleased to welcome Brendan Gill. He's a Democratic strategist. He was, in fact, the campaign manager for Phil Murphy, who will be the next governor of the state of New Jersey, and a freeholder in Essex County since 2011. Congratulations, Mr. Gill.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Can you give us the, I'm going to go old school on you, Reader's Digest version of how this campaign, which, I don't know, a year and a half ago, people said, who's Phil Murphy?
Yeah.
Now he's the governor.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think really 2 years ago, Phil came on the scene in a real way. He was our U.S. ambassador to Germany under President Obama, person who involved in philanthropy in New Jersey, but not someone who was probably a household name on the political scene by any stretch of the imagination. A person who saw a problem in terms of where he thought this state was headed, raised his hand to lead. Yeah, on May 16th, 2016, we launched our campaign for governor probably almost a year and a half in advance of the primary. Probably among most pundits, probably would have considered to be at that time, you know, a long shot candidate.
Very long shot.
A very long shot candidate.
Did you see him that way?
I didn't. I always saw Phil as a person who had an unbelievable skill set that I thought was the right person at the right time for this job. He was a person who had a deep policy basis, a person who took a lot of time to listen and understand the issues, had created an organization, as you know, just dedicated to that purpose. I saw a person who had tremendous retail political skills, a way to connect with people, which is very, very important, obviously, in public life, for sure. And I also saw just a person whose resume really was just so impressive. You know, a person who served, you know, worked on Wall Street, served as a U.S. ambassador to Germany, a person who pulled himself up, you know, came from nothing. If you've heard Phil tell his personal story,
told it right there, sitting a few months ago.
Middle class on a good day, graduate of a public high school, you know, works his way through Harvard University, and takes off from there. You know.
Let me ask you this, because we will in fact have Governor Murphy sitting here, engaging in a whole series of discussions on public policy issues. But the Brendan Gill story, public service in your blood. I have to disclose, I've known your dad for more than a few years. He was very influential in our son Nick's life. He was his teacher, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. He was teaching how many years he's been teaching? This will be
his 40, and he'll probably get mad if I mess this up, maybe 45 or 46 at least.
In the
Montclair Public Schools.
What were you taught about public service as a kid?
You know, listen, and people ask me all the time who's my hero, and my dad's my hero. You know, he is a person who essentially found his passion, but throughout his life encouraged young people to participate civically and in politics and government, not as a partisan matter.
Not at all.
You know, not as a partisan matter, but as a person who always thought that public life, public service, and giving back was important and should be an important part of your life. And he instilled that in our family growing up. And I'm glad, thank you, Steve, for bringing him up, because he's been a person who doesn't, you know, he's a real hero. You know, he's not a person seeking the spotlight. He's not a person who's not a person looking to have his name in the newspaper or that kind of thing. But he's been recognized lately in some different ways for his effort. And it was a big deal to be able to grow up with that inspiration to serve. It's what gave me the inspiration to want to serve and be a part of the political process.
By the way, check out the NJTV website, which we'll put up right now. There was a documentary that we aired here. It was actually called The One That Got Away. It's about a young man in the public schools who your dad connected with. And it's a powerful and poignant story. Just check that out. Let's come back to you. Phil Murphy, campaigning is one thing, governing is another. What would you say the top 3 issues governor, by the time this airs several times, Governor Murphy will be facing in this state?
Sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, you know, we campaigned about building a fair and stronger economy that works for all in New Jersey's 9 million residents. So what does that mean? You know, first and foremost, that means getting this economy back on track. New Jersey's economy has lagged behind our neighbors in New York and in Pennsylvania, and we need to address that immediately. That means improving our infrastructure, which is something that Phil talked about each and every every day. That means kind of reigniting our biosciences industry that is so critical to New Jersey's economic success. That means a reinvigorated effort on rebuilding and continuing to rebuild our urban centers. That means strengthening our public education system. So those are 4 things I
How about the pension situation?
Oh, no question. Pension's a big part of that.
I should clarify the public employee pension crisis. I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80 billion dollars and they're in the hole.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Steve, though, the real issue
You
there
sure
is
he wants to be governor?
It's a question I ask them all the time.
Okay, but just deal with that one.
Well, you know what?
How tough?
It's unbelievably tough. It's unbelievably tough. And it's funny you say that, Steve, because I think the thing that we noticed, and we spent 3 years on the road, I spent 3 years on the road with him going up and down this state. And unfortunately, we didn't take too many meetings where somebody said to us, you know what, this is going really well in New Jersey. You can leave this one alone.
What a cake job this is. No,
no, it's going to be an unbelievably challenging job. But again, it's, he didn't, as he has often said, Phil didn't ask for this, time in history, but it's a challenge that he accepts. That being said, there's a lot of good news here in this state. There's a lot of optimism that we can turn things around. I think the results we saw last Tuesday show that people are ready to turn the page and that they're hopeful for a change, and a change in leadership, a change in leadership style, and a change in direction. And I think the results last Tuesday showed that.
Actually, what Brendan is referring to as we take this program around the holidays, around Thanksgiving, were the historic races in New Jersey and Virginia and some other places. Real quick, Donald Trump, one word that comes to mind is?
Oof.
Look at you trying to get political on me.
Exactly.
I said that comes to mind.
One word that comes to mind, divisive.
Describe it.
He just an us versus them mentality, a have and have nots, an ability to try to distract people from real issues, and I just unfortunately don't think a person, tough to describe in one word, but a person who I don't believe ultimately is trying to appeal to the better nature of
what's the appeal? Sorry for interrupting, Brendan. What's the appeal of Donald Trump
listen,
for
in New Jersey,
millions?
Listen, I think
I'm not so much in New Jersey, but some in New Jersey, but millions across this nation.
Listen, I think we could talk a lot about that. We could probably have a whole show just dedicated to that.
What do you think it is?
Listen, I think that people are definitely feeling a degree of disconnect from their leaders and from the political system, and that for a variety of reasons, whatever he is saying or whatever he is talking about, they channeled that disconnect through their support of him, and that's not one thing. That could be many things. That could be their economic situation. That could be their just general disgust and feeling that the government's just not working anymore. That could be because the idea that they just think it's better to have somebody from the outside. That could be a variety of factors of why someone would support that style of leadership. As you know, you see in New Jersey, when you see his numbers in New Jersey, we're probably a little bit as an outlier in terms of his level of support, but I think he ultimately, when he was elected, now we're talking about from when he was elected to now.
Things have changed.
Things have changed substantially, but I think there were a lot of reasons that people ultimately were okay supporting him.
Let me ask you this: Governor Murphy, President Trump. Describe what you think that relationship will be.
Listen, I think we're optimistic that on some of those issues, like infrastructure, for example, that the relationship's going to be good. President Trump has said that he's committed to rebuilding the nation's infrastructure. The Gateway Tunnel project is probably going to be
New York City. You think Trump's committed to that with money, federal money?
Well, listen, he has, shockingly enough, he has said one thing and done another. I know what you're.
What are you trying to imply?
I mean, so what you look is him saying that he's committed to the project, but then you see him zeroing out part of the funding source, in his federal budget.
So infrastructure, you think they'll be okay?
Listen, infrastructure, we are hopeful, and we're going to work hard to make sure, and I know Governor Murphy will work hard to build that relationship. That's not, again.
How are they going to be on immigration?
So I think immigration, you're going to have some big differences. You're going to have some big differences, and Phil has said it repeatedly that when he thinks Donald Trump is wrong, and that he's going to stand up to Donald Trump, that he's going to use the power of the office to stand up to the president. So whether we're talking about protecting our dreamers, the 20,000 individuals who live in this in this state, who Phil has said repeatedly are every as American as his 4 kids, he's going to stand up to President.
Affordable Care Act, dismantling, if you will,
listen,
replacing
right now,
Obamacare, New Jersey?
As we afford this, as we are taping this, the SALT tax bill, the tax bill that's on the table right now.
State and local taxes. Right now, we don't know how it's going to play out.
Right.
You got a House bill, you got a Senate bill.
Sure.
In New Jersey, that's huge, being able
Sure.
to deduct that from your federal taxes because
it's so big. It's a deduction. You know, it's a middle class deduction. It helps. It's an entry point for people to get into the middle class here in this state. So that would be one, in terms of the loss of revenue that we would just overall lose here, and then two, just allowing people. It's getting that home ownership was one of the signs that you have made it, in this country, and that we believe, and I know Phil believes, that would severely hurt the opportunity for people to achieve that American dream.
Also, finally, I think Brenda is also making reference to the fact that in New Jersey, our property tax bills are not especially low. Don't open up a Pandora's box. I just wanted to just make that snarky comment.
They're not low, but
and being able to write them off on your federal taxes matters.
Is a big deal. No question. No question. That's a big deal. But I would say, to your final point on this, Steve,
a few seconds.
Phil did an event yesterday with our congressional delegation. You're talking about how we're going to interact with President Trump. We're going to make sure that we have a governor who works with our congressional delegation, Republican and Democrat, to stand up for the state when we think it's the right thing to do.
By the way, check out NJTV News, the archives. That show, that actually story aired on NJTV News the night before. Brendan Gill is a Democratic strategist. He is an Essex County Freeholder. And yes, he was the architect, the campaign manager for the Phil Murphy campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. And
appreciate it.
Tell your dad
for having me.
that he represents all public school teachers very well.
I will appreciate that.
Thank you.
God bless.
State of Affairs, same to you. State of Affairs will be right back right after this.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by Summit Medical Group, Delta Dental of New Jersey, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, the New Jersey Re-Entry Corporation, New Jersey Sharing Network, Community Food Bank of New Jersey, and by NJM Insurance Group.